Hello Flosstube friends, thank you for joining me for another Stitch With Me video. Today we're going to be talking all about French knots and I know you're excited. Are you excited? I know Ellen and Kelly are excited. This was a special request. I believe there are other people though who are looking for a French knot tutorial. There are other videos on YouTube that cover French knots and even the differences between French knots and colonial knots. I'm just going to be demonstrating French knots today. I do know how to make colonial knots, but I actually think the way you wrap the needle to form a colonial knot is just a little too finicky, a little too tricky, and you end up with essentially the same product. The colonial knots and French knots are noticeably different in the end. So we're just going to be talking about French knots. If you are a new viewer, you may not know, but I have many tutorials like this covering different specialty stitches on my channel, as well as regular Flosstube episodes. So I would encourage you to check those out. If you are interested in the different tools that I am using, anything from my needles to my hoop to this stand here, please check out my All About Needlework Tools video. I will link that below so it's easy for you to find. But just going through and filling in this little area with French knots. This is a panel produced by French General, and I think the idea is to embroider it and then finish it into a cushion cover or something like that. I got it from my mom as well as a few others that are similar in style. I'm not sure exactly where she got it, so you may just have to do a quick Google search, French General embroidery panel, to see if you can find it if you're interested. I don't know that I would actually want orange on my finished product, but I chose orange thread for you guys today because I figured it would be easy to see. And I hope that it is. If you are watching on your television, you may not be able to zoom in, but if you're watching on a laptop, tablet, or phone, and you want a closer view of what I'm doing, I think you should be able to pinch and zoom and get right in there and see what it is that I'm doing. But you can see that I've already done several French knots in just this little bit of time that I've spent talking with you already. And it's pretty simple. I know many of us know Ellen's famous words, French knots are BS, not abbreviated. And I know there are many people, many stitchers, many experienced embroiderers, cross stitchers, needleworkers who don't like French knots. They don't like forming them, stitching them. Maybe they don't like how they look. I don't know what it is. I do like how they look and I think they're pretty fun, and after you do a lot of them together they feel really fuzzy, so I do like that. But you can see, like anything else, I am just taking my time, being patient, coming up through the fabric, holding the thread here with my left hand. And if you are left-handed and you hold your needle in your left hand, you may need to reverse this. So I apologize to my left-handed viewers, but I hold my needle with my right hand. So I've come up through the fabric. I'm holding this thread with my left hand, holding it taut, but not pulling really hard. And then I'm going to scoop the thread once and twice, and then go back down, not in the same hole that I came up in, but one very near it. You can go down in the same hole, but I feel that the chances of this knot popping through to the back side are less if I go down in a different hole. I don't know if that's actually true. I think it comes down to the tension and the strength with which you pull that needle through to the back. Because I will show you 1, 2 wraps, and I'm going to pull, or excuse me, find a hole. And as I put my needle in, you'll notice that I'm still holding this thread with my left hand, holding it taut so that the wrap around the needle stays pretty tight. We will need a little bit of wiggle room to get the eye of that needle through the knot. Once the needle is safely through, then I can let go and allow that thread to go through. But if I did yank it really hard, that knot would pop right through, just as it did there. So now I've got a knot on the back that I will not be getting out. Pretty impossible. So I'm gonna travel way down here so that I know that knot is going to stay on the back, because it's not something I want to look at. A poorly, let's see, not poorly constructed French knot. It was constructed just fine, but now that it's on the back, it's tightened and isn't what it should be. So I don't want to try to bring that back to the front. There's no point in doing that. So I don't mind carrying my thread on the back just a little bit. So again, wrap once and twice. You can even go a third time, but stitching with a single strand of cotton floss on something like this, the French knots are so tiny that the difference between 2 wraps and 3 wraps is not very great. If you were doing something like ribbon embroidery, then the difference between 2 wraps and 3 wraps with your ribbons may make all the difference. If you are interested in ribbon embroidery, I actually also have a video on that, so I can link that below for you. I really like French knots. I like the texture that they add to pieces. Now, it's not something to be incorporated into every single needlework piece, but I think it can add something nice. I'll show you a piece that I have that did not require French knots, but that I added French knots to create some extra texture. Pull, oh, and see that popped through. That last French knot I did, I don't think it was very good. It was on the smaller side, and so it's not surprising to me that it popped through, and that's okay. We're just gonna continue with it. Now, if you are doing just a few French knots, then it may be noticeable when something isn't quite right. But on a piece like this, where it's very organic and we just have a ton shoved together, it doesn't really matter if they're on top of each other. It doesn't really matter if they're all perfectly formed or in straight lines or anything like that, because we've just got a ton of them shoved into a small little area. I wonder, can you guys think of any cross-stitch charts that require French knots? Now, I know that there is one from Ellen Maximum Cross Stitch. She has a Queen series, and her Queen Charlotte, her headdress, her wig, is created with French knots. And then there's Lucy Navier, which is a sampler from Hands Across the Sea Samplers. That was a Queen of the May many years ago. That one has one big beautiful tree in the center of it, and the leaves are formed with French knots. Unfortunately, that chart is long out of print. So if you see a copy somewhere, you should snag it if it's not overly expensive. Like if it's just retail, just go ahead and get it. I saw it in a shop, 3 years ago. I went up to House of Stitches. I was on my way to Chicago to visit some friends who had just had a baby. And so that's why I remember when this was, because that baby had just been born. And I stopped at House of Stitches, and they actually had a copy of Lucy Navier. And I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I was like, am I ever gonna stitch this? Do I really need to spend the $30-some? No, I don't. Do you know how often I think about that chart? A lot, quite often. But it's okay. As I have told some of my friends, I have made peace with the fact that I may never stitch Lucy Navier, because besides the thousands of French knots that make up that piece, it has a lot of other free embroidery work to it as well. But you can see I'm not doing anything, this isn't super fiddly. Sometimes when your thread gets a little twisted, you might want to let go of your needle and just let it hang and let things untwist below here to make it a little easier on yourself. But it's not particularly difficult to make a French knot, but it does require some patience. And you know what? At the end of the day, ultimately, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you are working on a chart that calls for French knots, there's always a way around it. You can always substitute it with something else. So if you really hate French knots, after you give them a try, you don't have to do them. But you shouldn't be afraid of them. Just like any specialty stitch, don't be afraid of it. Just give it a try And if you find that it's not for you, you don't like how it looks, something like that, then you don't have to use them. But don't shy away from them because you think they're particularly difficult. Now, as I get to the end of my thread here, it is becoming increasingly difficult for me to hold this here. And I find that actually I'm having trouble forming good French knots in this area because of that. I'm gonna try one more time, but I suspect I'm not gonna get any more good French knots out of this thread because it is so short. But we're gonna give it one more try. So wrap once, wrap twice, and let's see, I came up in that area. Okay, I need to rewrap once, twice, and I'm gonna go down here. There we go. Let's see. Oh, that one looks good. It's staying above the surface. I don't even know if you can see that. But I hope you can see the texture that I have achieved from all those French knots in one little area. It does look very nice. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out for you guys. Maybe you can see it. Let's see if I can focus there. Look at that. All those French knots sitting on the surface of this fabric. It looks really cool. So perhaps it's not the thing to incorporate in your needlework if you are really just focusing on cross stitch, but I know in recent months, those Nikki Franklin kits have become increasingly popular thanks to Sean Periwinkle Stitcher. I mean, even I go onto Nikki's website every once in a while and look at all the possibilities. Do I need another hobby? Do I need to expand my needlework interests? Probably not. Will I get a Nikki Franklin kit one day? Probably. I mean, absolutely. So I will link her website below as well. If you're interested in more things like this, if you are interested in expanding from cross stitch to other needlework and embroidery, you may want to check out her stuff. But very cute. And then I'll go ahead, let me just pull this out. Let's go ahead and focus here. There we go. This is the full panel that I have from French General. It says merci in the middle, which just means thank you in French. And there are all these flowers and leaves around. I'm not really sure what exactly I'm going to do with this, but I will say it has been a pleasure to stitch on this fabric. It's very nice, it's very soft, and it holds French knots just fine. So I think it's a nice product. Just wanted to highlight one way in which you can use French knots into your stitching. This is a piece I did, I don't know, over a year ago. This is a shepherd's bush piece. It's called Thoughts of Home. I used, I think, the called for threads, but I stitched it on 40 count rather than the called for 32, so it's really, really tiny. Now I stitched these two sheep here and added a button as well as another button up here. But on these sheep, you can see that I stitched them in cross stitch, but above that, on top of the cross stitch, I added a bunch of French knots. So that's just one way that you can incorporate them into your stitching. If you have animals or little flowers or something, and you want them to be extra fluffy, French knots are something to consider. I also added one down here. The tittle on the eye is done in a French knot. But very cute, very happy with how this turned out, and love my extra fluffy sheep. If you have any questions or comments, you may leave them here. You can also find me on Instagram at @StitchStitchBead, and I will include my email address down below in the drop-down box if you are interested in getting a hold of me that way. But again, look for information on the items used in this video, as well as links to videos that I mentioned in that drop-down box. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy stitching!